Will it be a prayer? Yeah, please start the prayers.
To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, one that's gone, foe destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to bliss, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, you, the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paced 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise and I bow, with pure bodies formed supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best supreme guide, to you I bow. With the supreme signs, face like the spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not incomparable, wise one, to you I bow. Great compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom too, well established in the trainings. The holy field endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble. A dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all-seeing, subdue the 4 faults, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, 4 lands, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you. May all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam Guratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
가장 먼저 지제 시친사라. 무슨 겨와 담제 다나디 주 긴되는 거 준비 차지때 엄마선 전주 그게베 잠겨 잔주 남겨 좀 알아도 세워 차스. 디 지제 시디 가산 신자 지제 직디 가산 신자 봐.
No. So yesterday we have touched on the first verse of the lamp for the path to awakening, and the first verse is, I pay homage with great respect to all the victorious ones of three times, to their teachings and to those who aspire to virtue. Urged by the good disciple Chanjuyu, I shall illuminate the lamp for the path to awakening.
자, 먼저 중시도 가서 자외 섭지 시 먼저 토르 샤고가 바데가르 고된 고바 닝고 주셔 되와 다디도 용라를 주셔 너무 주인의 다 전수 잠시 그냥 사버주 로리아 닝이 다다
So when we talk and give teachings of Dharma discourse, the elements of the requirements are the meaning and the purpose of the text, and what is the essential meaning, and what is the words that implies, and what is the functional of the text. So this is something you all know. I'm just doing a gentle reminder.
된적이 주버 주신 쉐버 담자바디 다단다 지시디나 신소와.
So the elements that I've indicated earlier is explained clearly from the first verse.
그래서 두숨 여와 담제다단 디주 긴되는 고바심비 차체 대해서 되거는 주버 주바데.
So to explain further, from the first verse, the first and the second lines indicates the paying homage and showing reverence and offering. So I pay homage with great respect to all the victorious ones of the three times, to their teaching and to those who aspire to virtue.
되는 로마 성고 전주 그 구입비르베 전주 남기 좀 말합도 세월 자수도 거는 쉐버 담자와되죠.
And then the next third and the fourth line is who has requested this teaching, and the purpose and the meaning that is implied is, urged by the good disciple Chanjuyu, I shall illuminate the lamp for the path to awakening.
지자다 당고도 거버들 쉐버 주신 쉐버 담자와단 슝무에 쉐버스 다 단다 먼저 드린디다 슝무에 쉐버나 주로.
So we have gone with paying homage to the victorious ones, and the purpose of the text. Now we go today from the next verse onwards, the actual the teaching.
다음 슝무에 쉐버데라 아니 기부송기 남기 남샤 도르템 바탕 대다 남기 아니 칭이 수술 쉐버스 자sabje 니리도.
Yes. And then comes the main outline of the teaching, which is the three scope of individuals, and what are the distinct characteristic that is within each of the scope of the individuals, and that will be stated from the second one verse onwards.
다 충단 딩단 초교르베 기부숨도 쉐버 자하시도 기부숨기 남기 남샤데 도르템 바티체.
And then from the second verse is the first two lines is indicating that there are three scopes of individuals. From the words, understand there are three kinds of persons because of their small, middling, and supreme capacities.
네 남샤 도르템 바타 아니 된제 대다기 있어도 간다 기부숨 대다기 아니 남기 칭이당 아니 예와당 장로 소바 수소를 시긴스 자sabje 니바트체 디다 대다 칭이 랍세바 수수예와 트버 자스 간에 칭이 되게 디딩기도.
So the first two line is the crux of what are the three kinds of person, and then the next third and the fourth line indicates the different characteristic in each of the individual seekers. So the third line says, I shall write clearly, distinguishingly, their individual characteristics.
다 디인디가나 다 당고 기부 주문을 남게 남샤기 다 징이다 예와데 쉐발라 강시 탐네 간다기 고르베 대화 잠다라 라니 돈돈네 니르체바 기부되네 타마르셰 스르가나다 기부 중요기 징이다 예와당 아니 장나서가 된데스 된게 인승도아.
Awesome. And the third line, the third verse indicates the initial scope or the small scope individual seekers of the path. And then the verse says, know that those who, by whatever means, seek for themselves no more than the pleasures of cyclic existence are persons of the least capacity. So this indicates the small individual scope, what are the distinct characteristics, what types are within the characteristic of the small scope individual. So this verse is focuses on the small scope individuals.
다 기부 징기 징이다 예와다 된 송야 되라 다 시베 되라 캡처신 디벨레레 도다니 강시 랑시 잠되니 기부되니 징시 자스디디 기부 징기 남기 남샤디 되는 것도.
Awesome. And then followed by that is the fourth verse, which is for the middling scope or intermediate scope of individual path seekers. And it reads, those who seek peace for themselves alone, turning their back on worldly pleasures and avoiding destructive actions, are said to be of middling capacity.
다 랑기 도베 동에게 강시 시행기 동에군 양다 세브르 군드 군엔드 기부되는 초인 노스도 간다 기부 초다 기부 준비를 남긴 남샤디 안디qab라데.
And then followed by that verse, the fifth verse is the higher scope individual or the advanced level of the individual seeker. And the verse reads, those who, through their personal dukkha, truly want to end completely all the dukkha, which is suffering of others, are persons of supreme capacity. So this verse is distinctively talks about the characteristic of the advanced or the supreme scope individual seekers.
저한테 이거나다 된데 남게 남샤 중딜 때야다 된수들이 이내다 딜에 최대 지당기 다 넘버 3개백이 최근 남샤 아니 지당디 아니 단디 가서는 제가 qab려야다 디직녀래야 숨기 숨다디 숨야디 다 계정 부르셔.
So now I will talk from the general Buddhist discourses, and that's something very important. And so I will rely on the commentary text and then and also speak from there.
지산 남지 지 남자스들간에 지단다 수수스야와 제고를 왔다.
So when we talk about the general teachings of the Buddha Dharma, that's one thing, and then also there is something that is individually distinct to each of the subject within the general thing. So to differentiate between that is something very essential.
저단다 지 남자스들간에 지단기 다 남 상계기 추 남샤리 제시디 균디 전에 지단기 추디다 기부 중을 남다한 저와 체거를 기부 징기 남다한 저와 체거를 기부 준비 남다한 저와 체거를 마세베 아니 도당아 니가 당 저와 차 디주디간에 남 용조당 단 저와 차에기 지시실이 되기도.
Yes. So when we talk about the general Buddhist discourse, it really encompasses the whole scope of the whole of the Buddha Dharma. So it touches about the small scope individuals, middling scope individuals, and the advanced or the supreme scope individuals. Not only that, it also touches on all the sutric part as well as the tantric part. So when we talk about the general Buddhist discourse, it really encompasses the whole spectrum of the Buddha's teaching.
디모고 단데 딜레 캡처다 캡처도 온도 제베이나 기부 중고단 진다 중을 주어 잠시 말에 지단기 최 용조 단제와 유배 대시시 리디도.
And then not only when we try to expand that general scope of the Buddhist teaching, not only it touches about different scope, small scope or just in general, but it also encompasses just in general the Dharma as such in a holistic spectrum. So I think the technical word is the holistic.
지산디 인디간에다 남배추레 다네지 이슈추레 가지추레 힌두구추레 안추 용조당 간단 저위베 남샤실레 인디간에 양디 게침부르도
When I indicate about the holistic, it also touches about different other religions other than Buddhism. So the Christian practitioners, the Hindu practitioner, the Muslim practitioners, and all the domain of the religious factors that also comes under the general outline or general spectrum.
이 인디간에다 먼저 봐 딜레 다 캡치기 야와지기나 아니 최케 레니기 간사다 최케 밀레니기 간사기 다양 onchi 고버드벨레 쿠펜도도와.
Yes. And then again, as we expand that further on, then we can sort of segregate those who are religious practitioners or believers of the path and those who are non-believers, because the purpose is to benefit everyone. So we also need to bring into the understanding the holistic spectrum.
안 딜레단도 카세르단도 간에 안 남주스원 나르레 최케렌제 최게 남샤기 그거 좀 있지 아니 최케 밀렘버제 지당기 가서를 대화 좀 있지 안 리지기다 최승이 들려야 괜단이 리지스도 간사리 숨기 다 간다 대수다 통주 가서를 남샤디야 수수선지 셔드잖아요 안고 카세부 차도다
No. And so again, when we try to expand that further, and then those who are religious believers or seekers, and they seek the path in order to have a purpose and happiness. And just like that, those who are non-believers, they also seek happiness. And then there are categories of individuals who really go against their religious belief, the atheist, and they also want happiness. So when we see that, we can bring in our mind the clarity that there are different individuals with disposition, with different inclinations.
디뉴가는다 된저기 간사르기 순간로기 되되닝부디다 아니 민두베게 간예디다 직부직양 차대고라서 가서 순간로 돼야 대와 아니 민두베도네 디 순간로야 다 간데 니즈 직부직양 차대기도
Yes. So when we look closer into these three different types of individuals, one thing that is common to all of these three individuals is wanting to have a purpose in life and wanting to have happiness. And all these three types of individuals, they do not want suffering, and they want to remove any kind of discomforts. So in terms of wanting happiness and not wanting suffering is something that is very much common to all these three individuals.
대화주베 탑당 동해세베 탑데라 지기 최단 대회도네 디지고레 지기 최단 만대회도네 지기요레 지기는 처리야 괜대회권에다 건들 달랑디 주고로 왔다 주단데.
Yes. So when we try to see into these three types of individuals, so this method that they employ in trying to fulfill the purpose of wanting happiness and not wanting suffering is something that's different in terms of the religious seekers and the non-religious seekers. Also, they seek happiness and not wanting suffering, and the individuals who go against the religious beliefs and the atheists, they also engage in wanting happiness and not wanting any suffering.
Chizanda dindegi dewa dela, ane dan asur tubjegi dewa dela, ane tarbe dewa, ane di nane kya tardube, tamjekimbe dewa, ane ngondu dewa zamsjeje, tuja deliya da, di rik di sumchegi dewa da, kandar mi dewa dela, tujegi dewa dela.
So, in terms of having a purpose and a goal of reaching to this happiness state, the categorization will be that wanting to have liberation, and that is the liberation is the for that individual is the ultimate happiness. Then there is another level where the ultimate happiness is the Buddhahood or the awakening enlightened state, and then there are seekers who aspire for that happiness is the favorable rebirths.
이거네다 tarbe 대회기 귤러 돈이기 취지다. 근데 털도 탐제 김백기 대회기 다 털도기 대회기 귤이야 돈이기 취지리야다 맞아 단다. 나중에 상기기 취지 되지 무슨 거로.
So the seekers that focuses on the happiness of the liberation or nirvana is one category, and then the other is the seekers who want to reach to the final state of Buddhahood, the awakening state. So we all are gathered here for this discourse, and the focus, our goal is to have happiness towards reaching to that nirvana and the complete enlightenment state.
아니 지단게 하다 미기 다다와 잠지 되는 얘기들라 아니 다 지단게 다와 되니지 샤고라.
So when we talk about in a general sense that the happiness seekers, they on a general level, they seek favorable rebirths into the God realm and human realm.
그래서 뒤에가 나다 단다디나잖아. 아주 기부 전부 아니 기부 딩 기부 중어라야 중어 해봤을 제제 아니 가서 우리 릭시르지 야와 된대도.
So when we try to dissect that, and then the different seekers of the small scope individual, and within the small scope individual there is something very ordinary small scope individual, and that is also a sub part of this small scope, and then the small scope that focuses on the future life, and then we have middling scope individuals and the advanced superior or supreme seekers individuals. So these are the categorization that is clearly stated into the commentary.
지도가나 다 먼저 쳐들이야 봐서 카세로 된 전에 다 슝기 제제 시송제 세로 된 전에 다 딘데기 기부 준비람 기부 딩기람 기부 중요람 아니 남순가 얘기다 남직 샤고다.
No. So then if we want more clarity within this text, then of course we can go to this understanding of the small scope individual, middle scope individual, and the advanced or the supreme scope individuals. And there is another scope, which is the scope that encompasses all three of them. The seeker that encompasses all these scope within the individual seeker. So that seeker will have all these common small scope, middle scope, and the supreme scope.
다 기부 중을 코네 남인라 다 기부 딩다 진비 남마인베기야 기부 중을 남직.
And then when we try to delve a little bit further, then we can also categorize that they are small scope individual. They seek only small scope. It has nothing to do with the other scope, but distinctively the characteristics they seek in the path of practice is very uniquely only to the small scope individuals. So we can also, separate in that categorization.
Dine ani kibu ding kwanam kibu ding jigu lam yinla, an kibu chimbu lam mayin bachi.
And then we go to another level of middling scope individuals, and that middling scope individual seekers, they seek the characteristic which is uniquely to the middle scope individual only. And it doesn't touch any of the supreme scope individual's characteristic. So that's another we can go into as an individual seeker.
Hana sing ta kibu chimbu kone lam yin bachi. Sidugane kibu dinge lam yin, chungwe lam yin, dinde che sha cho sarwa.
Then they can be a great scope or advanced level of individual that is distinctively unique characteristic of only great scope individual that doesn't have any of the small scope as well as the middle scope. So only the great scope, that could be a possibility.
Right? Di digane ta kibu ding dang, kibu chimbu dang, kibu ding tumwe lam chiksi.
And then the next level of individuals are the great scope or advanced advanced seekers that has the characteristic unique to the great scope individual, but also they take on the small scope individual and the middle scope individual. So this seeker will encompass all the three scopes individual characteristic. So there is a difference between the earlier and the later when it comes to the great scope individual. So
jidangi che yinla kibu chimbu che ma yin, kibu chungwe che ma yin, jidang che yin bachi sha chu da.
And there could be a possibility of a seeker, a seeker of a spiritual path which doesn't have any of the scope of individual. They don't have small scope individual characteristic, they don't have middle scope individual characteristic, and they don't have the advanced great scope individual characteristic.
Di indukanda dina ya ane dilepa shibsaru jona ane jidan chu yinba dan chu ma yinbe ki ta lamchi sinese de tapchi duan.
And then as we expand further, then they are individual who does engage in religious practices, and they are individuals who don't practice religion at all, so non-religious seekers.
그래서 다 딘제 야와지 되거나 아니 지다 최다 최마인베 야와지 있지.
And this way of categorization will also helpful in understanding what is the Dharma and non-Dharma,
아니야. 초신다진에 가세르 땅바에나 아니 개와다 띠고스 가리 개와래 가리 띠버렸어. 고디실레인 거다.
And when we do in this fashion, and then it will clearly can distinctively clarify what is virtuous and what is non-virtuous.
지주간에다 개와 미개와 아니야 딜라카세르던데 거니 개와지 미개와지 아니 룸마텐스 제제 숨레인다.
And then as we go further, then the categorization of actions will come into the actions of virtuous actions, virtuous, non-virtuous, and they can be neutral ones.
이 누가는다 되게 파자리 누가는 아니 레 개벨레 미개벨레 안 룸마팅기 레스 제제 레숨 야와치 인구도와.
Having this kind of understanding, then it can clarify very clearly about the karma, the karma of virtuous karma, non-virtuous karma, and the neutral karmas.
저선 뒤니까네 다 아주 줍 거야 지다 아니 줍 먹어야 지다 디지도가네 다 아주 상말로기 지금 줍저지 줍 내가 지우도가네 아니 계획에다 튕고도나 디 지르는 거를 디 줍고 레스제 디 송고요.
So this way of comprehending and understanding will help seekers what to adopt and what not to adopt, what to discard. And in that way, then we do what is positive in terms of reliance of the virtuous, and we dispel or discard those actions that are not positive, which means negative actions.
그래서 아니 미개에 레스도 간다 미개에 레다 튕고도나 아니 대디 줍초 말에 디제나 아니 디고요 스키지 딜리고라.
And so this understanding will clearly indicate that non-virtuous actions which are negative in nature, those are something we should not engage in. So then that makes it very clear not to engage into negative actions.
전에다 먼저 가서 그래. 그들 지고야지리야. 다 된데 롱마된 게 레시도와. 롱마된 게 레들래야 다 지네 제네 되게나 아니 제네 되게메나 다 된가서 계시셔도.
So something that's we can discuss is something about the neutral karmas. The neutral karmas are something that we should engage in or adopt, or something we should not adopt or disengage. So something that's that we can discuss.
그래서 다 된저기 레디 아니 기부 준비 남당 아니 기부 중을 남다 기부 쟁기 남래 삼다 요치 책도.
So these neutral karmas are interesting, that how these karmas are being engaged by the great scope individual seekers, the middle scope individual seekers, and the small scope individual seekers.
제산다 된저기 간저다 단다시에기 개벨레 미개벨레 농마등기레 세야지 레데 파 하세로다나 이기레당 아니 류기레당 아글레스 강다르냥 류가 이스미레 숨체고라.
And when we delve in further, the virtuous karma, non-virtuous karma, and the neutral karmas, and what is the implication of the karma itself? The karma is the intention, the motivation, and from that intention comes the body and the speech action. So it really it's very clear that the karma is engaged by mind, body, and speech.
디 된저기다 류기레다 마기레다 딜레양 아니 규레다 뒤기레스지 니카 니가 세가 찌인도가 안 딜레 카세르 좀봐 베나 류기레 샤시게나 뒤기레 카레 아니 규레 카레서.
And then when we delve in further regarding the body action, speech action, and the action of the mind, it again categorization is the initial motivation and the engaging action. So they are two categorization. So, and let's take an analogy here or the example here on the body level. So body action, that is the initial body action, and the engaged. The initial is the first causal factor, and the second is the engage, which is within that time frame.
야 레딜레야 아니 아주 뒤지고네 말한저 상에 지dun기레지다 가사 수수 결기레스시야 고야와 직직다
Nas.
말한저 지dun기레스시다 가사 수수 결기레지.
And again, the karma is categorized into the general common karma that we all experience together, and they are the second is the individual karma that we experience individually. So again, this is another kind of karma categorization.
다 레 인디간 근데 레디다 알아주 조 규남샤시 책이 유선사 한 규들레 템베다 드부 가라 연구를 쓰디가네 드부들라 안에 대화다 동행이 남이들이야 대화다 동행이 연구를 쓰시죠 도스마루어라다.
No. And so when we talk about the karma, basically karma on a causal level, the causes, and then the karma that brings about the fruition or the results of those karmas. And those karmas that result is something that we experience either happiness or the suffering that has been accumulated, so it's very important to dissect about the cause and the fruition or the resultant relationship. No.
어두스 지저 연디간에다 제자안에 레당 나민스 안에 레당 제부스 지저 남샤디다 두스 지저 용되도.
So this clearly talks about how different causes comes down to different result, how different causes brings about the experience result that we have to experience it. So that's how it is implied.
디인디간에다 먼저 상계베 남기 도도인들이야다 상계기 공부 다 탈바셰디 전에다 상계기 추순도간에 아니 상계 된제기다 공부한테 간데스고를 쓰디간에다 딩 당부 된제기다 탈바다 탐제기 공부 딩문지 거라다 문지 거라.
So now when we do the Dharma Buddhist discourse, we really have to understand very clearly what is our goal, what is the goal of Buddhahood, the final state of awakening state, or the goal of the liberation or the nirvana. And so it's very important to really understand the goal and the goal's characteristics.
그래서 디인디간에다 인디간에 제가 안에 상계 좀돼 아주 추에다 상계 좀돼 되네 마 중샤와 인디자네 안에 상계 좀돼 되기 토마르 간지 상계 수데 상계 좀돼 되기 토마르 안에 두개 바로 초사 지바장 타마 안에 상계베 인스체제 디순거다디 남바 참에다 테마고 다 군윤투니 열에 이내야 디 제셰 양교에 얘기하면 고 카시르스르다 예베테르도 니그레 삼산 팅기도.
So the Buddha's teaching is the teaching of the discussion that we all are engaged in. Is the source of our teaching is from the Lord Buddha's teaching. And when we really look into the historical facts about the Lord Buddha's engage into the Dharmic path, and that is first and foremost, he generated a mind, generated this awakening mind. And in the middle, he accumulated enormous amount of merits. And finally, he reached to the final state of Buddhahood and Nirvana. And this verse and the saying is something you all must have heard numerous times. But if you hear it again and again, it gives you much more confidence in his teachings and also brings you more conviction into the teachings.
지난해 상계 좀 되게 토말 두개 바로 초선도 간에 디송도 간에 다 가르송 거라서나 좀 상계 좀 되게 토말 완전히 직부직이야를 쓴 거라. 직부직이야 인순 거라.
No. So when we really touch on the first line, that the first Lord Buddha generated this awakening mind, and that really, what does that imply? And that line implies that the Lord Buddha was just like us, all of us. He was initially just ordinary, just like us.
안전하시 대화되네야 대외 규주마시 동해 민두 내야 동해 유세메시 완전한 신에다 고알이야 캠딩이 지부지기한 인순 거라다.
So the first line indicates clearly that Buddha was just like us, ordinary, in a sense that wanting to have happiness, but not knowing the causes to bring about that happiness, wishing to remove suffering, but we don't know the causes that to remove the suffering, and being entered into this cyclic existence of samsara and going into this samsara. So that characteristic is very much there in the beginning. No.
Then and pardo sentiment deche and then tomar tuki second and then around the chipa yin be kabla and sangye jumde delia mixege and semgi nanglo ne da kandar simshus ne mindu and samlo kept mixage chung res chung karasan da di zo ningji da and semba sangbo chanju ge sim da di gyulia da to chung ba yin sungora.
So the first verse about initially he had generated this awakening mind, that really talks about that although he was just ordinary like us, but from his own mind there was something unique quality that arisen within his mind stream, and that gave him tremendous amount of encouragement, and it also gave him a very special quality of the mind, which is the characteristic of the compassion and also wanting to reach to the complete enlightened state. So that special mind arisen within his mind stream, and that made it very special.
Then two ticket give jela and jumde de range pardo and gejen chame sungdurin ya chosa and tibachang sungora.
So then the second line indicates that he has among numerous eons, three eons of accumulation of merit and purification that he engaged in.
So that the samtang go the tua Kembazu da manguta delme samtang Titolia changwa mungu chungsa rede ineda and sawazo ina del kumatango da sangye jumde de tomar tuke so tu mage gi pardo anu jumde de da kandar kowa de ya kyawa kaze she da dil changka du changam mindu ni go kane chukdu cheche an ditwa dile
No. So then, having gone with tremendous eons of accumulation of merit and purification he has done, I'm sure this is something that we need to reflect and contemplate deeper. And of course, the seniors and who have practiced for a long time, you definitely must have thought through this process. But there are some young ones, they need to reflect on these deeply. And so the question here is that for 3 eons, he has accumulated so much of merit and purification practice. What about prior to that? You know, prior to that, what was he doing? Prior to that, he was just ordinary like us, you know. And what was he doing in that cyclic existence? That is something that you can reflect and think about.
Dineshi ngazu chibora di indukana da ngazu susu rangi le nge dangu susu ngoyen zing sabe chela ya ngaranzu kewa yama kazu le yore anzi kewa de go kane su re sidu kana ngaranzu le da pa rigdma sune yawa sum chigdu kewa ngame ngaranzu kansa chik and tse dile ya da tanda ngaranzu nyam nyonshibe kansa chik da kewa chima motune dugu yudu zane jaza ane
Yes. So So we are same in terms of that commonality. And then in that way, what is essential here is to really understand, identify the characteristic, who am I, that you have to really break it down, that identify yourself. What is that identification that you identify yourself? Who am I? And was there a beginning? That's another question to go into deeper. And then when we really delve into that, we can bring about three different elements within our own individual self. That what was I in the earlier birth? Who was I in the earlier birth? Who am I in this present birth? And who I will be in the future birth. So again, in terms of time frame, the earlier birth, the present birth, and the future birth, that is something that we can identify ourselves. Who am I? And that's categorization is of these three different elements that brings about how to identify who am I. Yes.
대화는 신기 더 좀되대 랑이래 랑이게 람다가 뜬 거라 토마르 데베 좀되대 랑이게 방부 토마르 야왕하면 남소 간수다 지구지게 인스제제다 뒤에 두수디 아니 그뒤은 고추버래 가수그 바동 안수다 지구지네 여르스제제 디삼로치 땅 되네 바르도 아니 좀되대 투총 안서사 디바전되가네 아니 좀되대 전주 샘플 아니 간사 개발진지 규르도가네 디 규르 링델이야 아니 좀되대 두수 가수지 링리야 도스제제 남기 내가리야 다 간다로 초사 디바전의 슈요래 아니 간사 간지지게 다 내림리야 내요레스 아니 타마 간사신 수지단 만데베게 아니 가르소르다 말하주다 간사 페바 수지단 만데베 아니 좀되대 미세게 아니 탐제기 몇 마상 개베스 지대잖아요 간소 간사리
And so looking closely into the how to identify who am I in relation to the previous birth, present birth, and the future birth. And just like that, Lord Buddha, initially he has generated this awakening mind, but so from that time frame onwards, from the awakening mind cultivation, prior to that he was just same like us, but once he has generated that awakening mind, and then he has accumulated tremendous amount of merit and purification. So when the time that he has arisen with this awakening mind and start accumulating tremendous amount of merit and purification, that made him uncommon. That made him a very special being, individual as such. And that made him a distinguished individual, engaged into this tremendous amount of merit and purification practices. And then at the end, he became extraordinary individual in reaching to the final state of awakening or the Buddhahood. And when he reached to that, then he's a knower of everything, and that made him extraordinary. So that's how we can also dissect this verse in terms of his first in awakening mind, and then in the middle, tremendous amount of enormous amount of merit and purification practice, and finally he reached to the Buddhahood level.
되네다 바로 느끼진 담면숨기 초사이스 제제 송약 디기 바로 느끼진 담면숨기 장가되다 남아서 나는 괜찮이에나 그래나.
So Gisela is asking an open question to everyone here that once he has developed this awakening mind and he has accumulated 3 eons, of engaging into accumulating merit and purification, can anyone from the audience talk about, can you expand on this 3 eons that he has. Can you do you know about this number, and how can you explain further into it? What about 1 eon? You know, with these 3 eons. Yeah.
He accumulated the first eon, countless eon, on the path of accumulation and preparation. And then the second eon from the path of seeing through the 8th ground, and then the 8th, 9th, and 10th ground, the third eon.
The third eon is? 8, 9, 10. The Gejin Tamisum Dima, Yovachina Gejin Tangbo Niva Sumbachini Yovachigin is, Ani Gejin Tangbo Dinalola, Ani Solam the Jolam Ginegapso. Che, Gejin Niva della, Ani Tolam Ginegapsune Chine, Ani Sakeva Patuche, Ani Gejin Sumba della, Ani Sakeva Goachua, Antar Tamjiki Bogantavres, Tendisi Shai.
Di Gejin Sumlama. 사람게 남샤 고식 yap단데서도 다 단딩 단기에 건지 쉬어야다라 계제 찍려야 다 간다 로가즈 로다 지와 담봄다 사야 가서 쳐르나 디직 세부지 송투데
Yes, Venerable Sebela has explained that you have really wonderfully, marvelously explained and dissected that each eons, 3 eons, right? First eon, second eon, and third eon, dissected. But Geshe is really happy with your answer and is very good. But he wants to get this more accurate answer that for each eon, what, like, how many billions or millions are there within the each? In each eon, in 1 eon, in each eon, what are, billions or trillions or millions? What is there within that?
지다 계진지에 당고들이 깨버들이야 깨버져서 당고들이 깨버 차바당 내바당 지고스제제 년을 된지 줄로야 샤르고다
차와다
깨버 차바 차의 저주듯이 되는 깨버 내주듯이 안내선이야 깨버 지주로 지주듯이 안디가 단대시잖아 바톤스제제 깨버 동바치도 다 이내 깨버 차바다 내바당 지고 숨디 다
So there's something that would be really helpful if you take into consideration that how the formation of our existence come about. Formation. First is the formation, and the second is the existence period. When the existence of that flourishment, and then the third is the destruction. So that's something, if you bring that in your mind, that'll be quite useful.
저다 단대 내가 찾았으나 단한 안주 개바 내배 뒤지 들어왔어. 개바 내배 뒤지 지상 록 가주지를 개바 내기나.
No. So right now we are in the period where there is existence. So how long we can exist, so that time frame is something, a query that needs to reflect on how long this existence can stay. Nepa.
되는 디지라 아니 개바디 지기스고라 지게 고츠고라 지게 고츠데 그는 조 중앙식 지주고라 중앙식 지도 간에 지베 링들이야다 가서를 로 가즈지기 나로래 안 차산다 매버 차주기나 동고동 야ቸ기나
Yes. And since now we are in the existent phase period, then how long that period will go on? And another query that we can think about is about when would it start the destruction? Because when the destruction happens, destruction happens from the 4 elements, the earth, water, fire, and space, So, when would the destruction start? That destruction, or degradation would be maybe better word, I don't know. So that time period when will happen. So that's another thing to take into consideration.
저선다 지두선에 예 당고 세 종아디 참말로 간다르 사용고 지게나 간데 지게나 디 참말로 지기로 와디 저선다 뒤에 가서 지링래 세 중에 지게 아니 거다 지두고 있나 그러 지 아니 디젤레 아니 배제다 메인 지게기 되게 참말로 치지 메인 지게기 뒤에 가서 지링래 야다 메인 색제 되게 되니 안 지두고 있나.
So when we talk about the degradation or the destruction of the existence, it'll start from the earthly destruction, and so the earthly destruction, we could say the earthquakes. The earthquakes are one factor of the earth degradation, and the question is how long that will go on. And then from the earth degradation then comes the fire degradation or the fire's destructions. So when the fire destruction happens, it really destroys everything, bring it down to the particles. So how long that will go on, so that is something to reflect on.
make sense and DJ the patient 주의지고용 세대고는 디젤로 롱기지고용 되게 참아 감제 매바차체 딱 간다를 도스제 간다 동바차로서 봐 간다 뇌지 된 동바체로 봐 저한테 그 동바차발로 로가서 걸사래로 봐.
And so when we look into the four elements, degradation and the destruction, then after fire the water happens, the water element bring about the destruction, and now again to reflect is how long will that take place, and then after that would be the air, and when the air destruction or degradation happen, then everything of the existence will be level out, will be vanished, everything will be vanished. So it would be another kind of emptiness, everything will be destroyed. So that is something to reflect on.
저다 아니 동백개발치도 간다 동백개발도 로가주지를 내기나.
And then once everything is destroyed and everything, how long that empty phase of that destruction, how long will that go on, is another to think about.
되네 아니 신내야 개발차야 고조용으로.
And then
고조용으로.
no. And then after that that phase is over, and then start again from the very beginning of formation. The formation can start coming back.
세상 차비 개발에도 가네요. 중앙시 심기 차이도 가네 아니야. 롱기 개발차 되네 주의 개발차 되네 세 직된 차 도시제 직된 차이도 가네. 다디 차제 아니 디 나로리야 주기 심제 레레 봐도 뉴주기 심제 니가 좀 해가 봐도 아니 다야 로카소에 걸사래. 된적이다 간다리 개발 시디 코로나 찍을 때는 된적이야 계신 직소라지 된적 장루도.
And then from the formation, when it first begins, it's again the four elements will start coming into play. The air element, the water, and the fire and earth. And then slowly, in a gradual phase, the existence of our environment will come about, and then how long will that formation happens, and then slowly that formation of the existence happens. Then when would the sentient beings start, coming into these existence? How long will the sentient beings start coming in, enter into this existence? So that's another to reflect on. So basically, this whole process of how the formation and then existence phase, then the destruction phase again. So the whole one round, the whole one scope of the round cycle would be one eon.
jirwa ta dende tangkyuni ta nge di shu goya karisa na zoji maranzu tanda deli ya gombe nanglo ya mune namsha kyundi ne tanda nisha chujik sikirwa nga tsuni nisha chujik ita kandar chego namsu tuinda tuinsam sidu kane shoge gomi kya yagi tuzu che dene tso yagi tuzu che dene me pecha lo yagi tuingi tanda chik benzu ta tige tsangma tuzu yudu tsane jaza nga zu namgyune ta ngaranzu gomdili ya 지 제금단 조금 수도 간에 당아주 제금 그 곰디 말아서 대 니마질이야 추주 지니 가서 경고네 배 니마 자신 경에도 와 인도 간에다 곰기 남샤디 두스 제제 베줄로글로그 딘데 곰기 남샤디 지기 제비나 아니 곰디 삐다고 야고 책도 와 예수가 김제 직다 조직티
And the reason why I have extensively explained all this and the main purpose of my explanation is because this place is a monastic community. And so you have a daily routine that takes place and there is a schedule, time frame. So, and there is the session and the post-session on a daily basis. And I have observed here that you also have prayer sessions, and you have a great library resources that you can reflect the scriptures on. And when we do meditation, of course, we have two types of meditation, of analytical meditation and the calm abiding. So all these are resources that are so much available to each one of you. And so the reason I have gave the earlier explanation is very much relevant to your daily routine.
지산디 이거는 아주 단담에 오늘 말아도 참에 다지 지도용 레를 때네 고급 상보다 지 내상보든데 여버디 아니 단다 차별을 차시기나 단균 남겨 넘버 2에 조 람리다 된저 냠레니 이거는 람리 베줄로그게 가네마 다 단기내신 추 세야딩이야 추당 추마인 바칸데이메 아니 추려양 지당게 추당 아니 남바상기베 추 간데이메 남바상기베 추 낭래양 아니 릭숨이바 된저다 르기 제바제 제금제 아니 디네소소 도바샤바디 아니 벤수에 나로네 람리 베제다 베제망부유스 유스사 디네제제 카세르당 아니 디카세르당 맞아야 중신단에 개바 차수유 거를 여버도 로디 제비나 아니 카세부 아니 로링이부 아니 퇴삼 곰대원 퇴바당 삼바당 곰대원의 뷰다고시 차트서와.
Yes. And so it is very important to appreciate what we have here. It is because of the collective karma of each one of you have gathered here, and having this common karma of utilizing these common resources available here. And so this virtuous karma, how can we utilize it to the highest potential? And so for that, it just like explained earlier, you hear the teachings, and then try to go in your mind, what are the different types and the various way that I have explained earlier, on an individual basis of understanding the general perspective, and then understanding about religious practice of different domains, and within the Buddhist practice, what are different types of Buddhist practices. And then when you start doing those reflections, it's an analytical meditation, you are doing it. And once you have this analytical meditation, you will come out with different kinds of doubts and queries, and then you can use the library as the resources in trying to gather classical texts, what they talk about, and also relate to different commentaries, the commentaries about how this existence of different realms come into existence. You can delve more by doing more research. And so using these resources to the highest way is very, very important, because that will help you with extensive hearing, extensive contemplation, and extensive meditation. And once you do that, then the clarity comes within your mind. That's the point here. So doing all these extensive practices will bring more clarity, more confidence, and then more conviction arises within yourself. And that's the purpose to do that. Yes.
상기 좀 되게 담아상기네 아니 최소한에 되라 상기에 최되라 안당이네 시제 대고 지당기 너희 초지당 아기 초스제제 도당아기 주인이 이어지도 거는 너희 주당 아기 초스 아기 주스제제 니 이어지고라.
And then, Lord Buddha's teachings, when he finally reached to the highest state of enlightenment, and then he started giving discourses, and the discourses are encompassed within the sutric path and the tantric path. So these are two distinctive distinguishment that's of the Buddha's discourse.
단 너고 쳐들라 단단한 신세 대고 준비 churchidang kandar ani gibu dingdang tumewe chus cheche chusum tus malidikwa.
And in the sutric path, then we can delve deeper of seeing that there is the Mahayana path, and there is a path which is middling scope individuals path. So we can say in that way also.
다들 기부충을 단 징기 삼바당 이제 중 언더체네 아니 미다베 거를 손셰베 주직 아니 년순숨기 니밀로 소바된 저 손셰베 주직 봐 아니 겸로 렌저게 남샤 미기 주봉 그 추름 라소바된 저기다 남샤 된셰베게 아니 상기베 주직.
And so when we delve into this of the small scope individual and the middle scope individual, common characteristics are the characteristic in terms of understanding and contemplating on the impermanence nature of phenomena, and then about the seeing the downfalls of the lower realms and this cyclic existence, and then also refuge, going for refuge to the three jewels, and then understanding the karmic aspect of it and the karma in relation to the 10 virtues and 10 non-virtues. So all these topics will come into the common of small scope and middle scope.
And then any 기부 중기 남기 남샤나 레이드가네 아니 덴바시 남샤 덴제양라 중기기 남샤 아니 다음에 라고의 남샤 강사 다음에 봐 저기 다음에 어디 남샤 되게 들려인거다.
To reiterate, the earlier was on more of common, that is to the small scope individual, but the middle just by distinctively to the middle scope individuals are the Four Noble Truths, the 12 links of dependent arising, and then the grosser understanding of the selflessness of a person and the selflessness of a phenomena.
대보 친구 남긴 남샤들이 인도가네 대보 친구들라 도당아 니제 아니 도요 온도 지도잖아 아니 버진 쪽에 남샤한테 수다 아니 디나네게 양 다메려야 저기 다메 참여 남샤한테 수시한 딜레인거도.
And then when we go into the great scope individuals, then the great scope individuals would have the sutric part and the tantric part, and the sutric part that is uniquely to the great scope individuals are the 6 perfections, and also the subtle understanding of the selflessness of a person and the selflessness of a phenomena.
이거는 다 이거는 주변에 이제 먼저다 공부 남샤 얘기니까네 제가 기부 중요한 남긴 남샤 레인데 아니 지 남지 시선 쉐베나 아니 신이 된수다 된줄 된신 예가바다 아니 미다베 거다 아니 겸주 거다 렌저그 거티게 되는 수수원에 전에 공기도 지혜도 지도가는 오늘 주비다고 샤이거다.
And so when we go into the small scope individuals, when we really know the holistic or encompasses what are unique characteristic of each of the individual seekers, then when the small scope individuals, we can understand the understanding of the grosser understanding of impermanence and different rebirth process, going for refuge, and precious human life, all these will be in the small scope. So when you do in that way, really delving into the different characteristics, then your Dharma practice become much more pure.
And then give drinking namsha lay the gun and tembashi namsha, then they are not chungi namsha, and then dame rakben namsha, the zule design, and the tembashi namsha lion, she's tembash karsur tungelia, kishu she, the gun, then she made us to chutu namsha, the Zukomji in the gun, and come give me qualia, tabo, and a gachimbo in the Yonsarva.
No. And then for the middle scope individuals, those are distinctly to the middle scope individual seekers, it falls under the characteristic of the Four Noble Truths, 12 links of dependent arising, and the grosser understanding of the selflessness aspects of it. So, and then within the Four Noble Truths, we can dissect each of the truths or have four characteristics. And so these are all together, there are 16 different characteristics. So when you really go into these types and the characteristic unique to them, and what happens to your mind, the clarity will happens. Once the clarity happens, then your goal will become much more more focused, and then the clarity will be much more prominent. So in this way of analytical meditation, of analyzing it, is really beneficial.
아니 대고 준비 남샤나 레인도 근데 당연하지 않은 버진 두근 남샤 안 버진 레레라야 숨숨 지기요 봐 지도가네 아니 조숨 좋게 야 버진 주 남샤 안 그sam다야지 근데 돈이 갈리도 가네 돈이 참모 저 강사가 담에다 저 담에 님의 강도 sam다에 되가네 아니 곰데 오늘 빼삐다고 아니 차창와 아니 건주 발숨데 빼다고 싶으시 용서라
No. And when we go into the great scope individuals, the characteristic unique to the great scope or the superior scope individuals are unique is the sixth perfection. And for each of the sixth perfection, they have three characteristics within each of the perfection. And then also there is and that will the whole collectively of the sixth perfection, the characteristic will be 18, so and then they are another way of explaining the sixth perfection extensively as 10 perfections, and so if you do in this fashion, and then the understanding of the emptiness, selflessness become much more subtle. The subtle understanding of the subtle level of individual selflessness and the subtle selflessness of a phenomena. So these way, when you bring those in your mind, then the whole spectrum of your own individual practice become much more refined, more clear, and then also it will be more complete practice. That's another important point. It becomes a complete practice, and then it becomes more refined practice, and then conviction will arise.
디지디가네 아니 퍼진 두기 냠네 간 레인데가네 아니 남주가 란줄이야지 미지단 제비게다 내주 망고지다 권대와 샤도도 샤인데가네 아니 수술이야지 콘도중이다 수술로마데 주나 아니 수배 남샤 간디네 아니 아란주 단데데 즉 참말로 지금 미유다 되된주 야 미유샤제데 갈레캡티 디가네 아니 디준주기 냠레야 간디스 쪼고고 유메 아니 데레 아란주 상마 다가스 말에 직수지요레 직수데 다가스 갈수레다 부수도보다 갈레카보여 직수 된데게 말에 고쳐다 튼베 직수인데가네 디상마 수직미 냠레야 간디스 쪼고고 유메 아니 남자 견디 수수지 가요라이 내가 제해 된조 아니 진배 냠내려 간스 두고 유매 아니 디다 지지 아니 조조 삼대 타만이 시지고 시고를 제사 삼대 그 파진다 셰럽 그 파진이라 아니 슈칸드스 갸고고메 디사마 건 제유지다 아니 삼다에 요버시 차득도
So then we can bring the six perfection to our daily practice because we are here gathered and seeking a Dharma path and seeking our own individual practice, and we can bring the sixth perfection that is very much within our activities, daily activities. And so there are individuals who will trigger you with anger, frustration and all this. How can you practice your perfection of patience? How can you apply this on a practical level? And once you can apply that, then your perfection of patience will develop. And then in terms of your study here, how much you want to go into your practice, it's a joyous perseverance. It's not something that you do it with a bogged down determination, but rather a joyous perseverance into your practice, and that becomes the perfection of joyous perseverance. And then this is a monastic community, is a monastic institution. There are rules and regulations that one has to follow. So we don't follow those out of you have to do it, and then being a little bit annoyed, but rather, you do these rules and regulation with understanding of engaging into these rules and regulation with the perfection of morality. So again, this comes under the perfection of morality. And then, so when you do this in this kind of fashion, and then of course, whatever you do on a daily basis, you do the interactions among each other or others, you do with the perfection of generosity, and so these four perfection comes into play into your daily activities. And then most important is the perfection of meditative concentration that one needs to really engage in order for the qualities to arise in your mind. And then there's a perfection of wisdom in understanding, distinguishing the path. And so then the whole sixth perfection comes into your daily routine, and it becomes powerful, and that's how you engage into the practice.
Some consumption, the Jebachi in the Gana, and Shanda Chashi in a penna sube, Kadu Chashi Ugana, Subase, and Yusulia, Mindubi, Kanda Lech, Shuna Dilia, Land Lawyer, Dilla Captecha, Sigore, Dilla Land, Captecha Madonna, the Gonda Vuchita, Suso Pamba Sigora, Di Duganeta, Suba Gombatan, and Gondang Pampanilia, Kabakari, the Kabachibu, the Kabachi Tuzara, the Kabachi Dizane, and
So let's take the example of perfection of patience, and that we have to apply this patience all the time. And normally when somebody triggered you, and then we come with a certain level of irritation first, and then frustration, and then we want to answer back, because if I don't answer back, I'll be lost. That is a initial urge that comes, and so which if you don't practice patience, then these things can happen. You really want to defend yourself, and answer back. But when you do the perfection of patience, you don't answer back because you see the benefits of the patience. You already in your mind see the benefits of the patience, and so you tolerate, you do the practice of patience. So again, we can see here clearly what do you mean by not replying, responding, and defending, is the loss that you have and the endurance that you do, the perfection of patience you do. Again, there is a demarcation, you can do it in your mind. And then once you are able to do that, then you can enter into this perfection of patience.
아니 소바군베 펜 소베 줌제 소바 마군베 니미 디경 되게 대상월로야 되상권 지구도.
So having this extensive hearing, extensive contemplation, and extensive meditating on this, it is really understanding the perfection of patience in relation to understanding the enormous benefits that brings about by practicing patience, by doing these, perfecting the patience. What are the results that's come out of these perfecting the patience? And then also analyzing. These are analytical meditation you do in your mind, and then you said, if I don't practice patience, what would be the loss? What are the disadvantages of it? And if I don't do it, then what are the downfalls of it? You know, so there are so many parameters that you can take into consideration, and when you do that, then it becomes an analytical meditation.
가서라다 tat 간다 수수 깔래 개바다 두리 개샤바실 시고라 근데 수수 깔래 개 두리 개샤바디 아니 준줄이야 간데스 다 냠는 두고도 준줄 간데스 책도 아니 수수 깔래 개샤바다 지 배준 샤바디 아니 깔래랑다 아니 두경 간데스 책도 디 아니 거의 야와키 가세부지 차인 것도 왔어 디 저도가 아니 깔래 개바디 준줄 냠는 두고도나 딜레 페인 갈 때도 준주 마지나 디님이다 수수 줄려 가지 쇼고도 아니 디 카세브 차인데 간에 아디 수술에 기본 수주도 왔어.
And we can take the perfection of the joyish perseverance, and so when we normally take into account, the perseverance is something that you do hard work. You are persevering with hardship, you know, and so that's another account that we normally take into consideration. But here it is a joyous perseverance to the virtues, and so again you have to make a distinguish, you know, whether it's a joyous perseverance or it's a hardship. And then what are the benefits if I do joyous perseverance, and what will bring the result of those joyous perseverance? And if I don't engage into joyous perseverance, what are the disadvantages that brings about? What are the different downfalls that comes about? So when you analyze this analytical meditation in your mind, then you can clearly distinguish, you know, within your mind, what is hardship and what is joyous perseverance, and the clarity will be more clear within your mind. Yes.
안 강사 망고유는 되베 강사다 되베 기부치 차티고 알아서 되베 강사 차인데 그 나란줄은 되베 뭐고 망고치네 다 그거요를 되베 뭐고 망고치다 나란줄 되와 차티고라 근데 일단 되베 뭐부디 아니 수술에 파 카제 주디잖아요 디 진배 냠내려 약간 데스 책도 아니 야디 수술이야 파차 로디가네 아니 경란 간데고 드디어 제시미나 아니 진배 냠내 제나 아니 케가르도 진배 냠내 맞이나 경가르도 디카세부 차인데 간에 아 그런래야 가르소래 맞아 지 냠내다 딜레템베게다 간다리 대화다 동에 망고지 주야도 왔어.
And the next is we can take into consideration the perfection of generosity. When we do the perfection of generosity, of course, we all have desire. We are in the desire realm. We have lots of desires, and desires are there. There are so many desires that we aspire to. So when you do the perfection of generosity, the element that needs to take into consideration is that if I detach myself from whatever thing that you want to give generosity to other, what is my loss or what is my gain by doing that. You have to be very clear about that before giving the gift or whatever generosity you are doing it. And if you are able and have conviction that you can detach from whatever you are engaging in that, and you don't feel any loss, there's no attachment towards whatever you are doing, then it becomes the perfection of generosity. And so again, they should be the analyzation process you have to do prior to in the act of generosity. So when you do that, then again you bring into your mind what are the benefits of the perfection of generosity, what are the results that brings by doing this perfection of generosity. If I don't engage into the perfection of generosity, what are the disadvantages? And if I don't do the perfection of generosity, what are the downfalls of it? So when you do all these analytical process, it makes the practice much more pure and complete. And then the practice become much more grounded, and then in that way the happiness or the suffering reduction can be easily understood. So that's how the process needs to be done.
진주간다 덴데기 먼저 퍼진 쪽이 다 냠내스네 메도딘 마만체가라서 류당하기 다 자와다 류당하기 저 레간이야 두스 저 차되기도 왔어. 네 나당 알아들은 영자 차슈다 셈대로 왔어. 셈이 삼나단다. 가서는 남의 잠지가서는 남의 원돈 저다를 취제 간예직체 잠지가서는 레로다 준비온 그 저다를 취제야 투쇼직칭 인도가는다 덴데기 덴데가로야 다지 전세당 바유된 거에 대해 계신부 차주고 요소사 아니 셈기 로로저단데 아니 마 벌진 탐번이 가라 아니 삼대가 가라야 간데스 뽑고도 간데스 쪼고도 디 냠내 돌이야 토섬 공수 제비나 아니 셈기 남샤디 셈기 남샤지다 수수 셈디 수수기 두어래야 아니 오늘 지 가서래 디 난주날 예번의 시기 아니 그 다른데 배시 야고시 지도야 다 냠내 야고시 지도야 용서를 봐.
So when we really touch on these six perfections and looking into these six perfections, much of the action comes from the bodily action and the speech action. But what is most complicated is the mind. It is the mind that is most complicated, and the mind, we really need to understand it. The mind, if we don't understand, a lot of the time, mind is fully distracted. Mind goes everywhere. And then at times, not only there's numerous amount of distraction, but there is also the laziness factor that seeps in. And the laziness factor seeps in, then there's kind of discouragement that can happen. So when these happens, all these uneasiness happens, it is very important to employ the mindfulness and vigilance. So these are important to bring about in order to apply the appropriate antidotes. And so when you do in this fashion, then you do extensive hearing, extensive contemplation, and extensive meditation on these processes of the mental functions, how it goes about. And eventually, by doing that, one can tame your own mind. One can able to tame your own mind. And then it will go parallel to what Buddha has taught in the scriptures. And then you really want to delve deeper into the meditative concentration and the perfection of meditative concentration and perfection of wisdom. And once you do that, then the different methods you will employ to tame the mind, and then your practice become more refined and more complete.
진주가나 아니 제산단다 삼대기 거들이야 아니 신내 줍다다 라동 줍다다 안나 라워도 알아 전남 쉐긴데네 다 시주여나 시제 고와 korgiyene kwa khosegi zawade semle tubaris shigore marzu tunge da kanye chuene kanye chuya ke zawade ne semle tubaris ke sheti gorasa da na shinki tarba tobugene tarba semgi dine tobiaris jenan jonzu sheti gorwa da na jinre 디인도가나 탐제게 벽공바데 조 셈기 두고야레 수디가네 아니 삼대기 냠네 카두델이야 아니 셈기 간다고 검기나 샤다 셈기 조다 제비나 아니 대답세기 중세기 자와데 디인바데 모지 트베이나 아니 가르소레 미지 된데 때문에 영향도 왔어.
And then we go into this understanding of the perfection of meditative concentration. And when we really go into the perfection of meditative concentration, we are touching on the two types of meditation, which is the shamatha, the calm abiding meditation, and the insight meditation. So, and then the interest, the passion will come into your mind to really delve into this, because there is a saying that what we are rotating in this cyclic existence is pretty much from our mind. You know, it's the mind that brings about this cyclic existence. So it's the mind that we need to tame. So when you look into this cyclic existence, it's rooted from our own mind. And so if we know where the roots come out, we can root it out. The non-beneficial things, and then also all the sufferings and the discomfort that we experience is also coming from the mind. The root is the mind. And in terms of we want to reach to the highest state of nirvana and liberation, and going to the nirvana and liberation has to come from the mind. You know, and again, if we want to reach to the highest state of enlightenment, Buddhahood, it has to come from our own individual mind. So it is the mind that really manifests all these, whether it's a suffering or cyclic existence, whether it's a nirvana, whether it's a complete state of enlightenment. It is our own mind and that is doing that. So when you do in that process, then you really want to delve into this meditative concentration and lead your mind with these qualities, and because you want to bring about, uproot, you know, root it out, those elements that brings about suffering. And when you do that, then your practice become more refined, complete, and then your life becomes purposeful.
지사네 버진 타메 qable야 다 가리네면에 말한줄이야 고백 대화이네레 무고백 동해이네레 대탐절로 규단 깨는데 중국어에 뒤에 뭐에 있는 수치도로 저거를 진짜 손들간에 아니 뭐에 있는 수 댐바 오늘 양답에 댐바 털도기 대화 댐바 디다 땐을 봐야 된다래야 아니 버진 타마 싫어 버진 디기 땐을 보고에 되거나 싫어 버진 염려 주되거나 뭐에 있는 수 댐바 털도 버디 뭐에 진도 되잖아 아니 다 계시시 샤디도 왔어.
And then we go to the last perfection, the perfection of the wisdom chapter, the wisdom aspect. And so whatever we experience, that the happiness that we all experiences and the suffering that we all experiences, they all come out by the different causes and conditions that interplay in terms of having happiness state or the suffering state. And so, and then wanting to know the reality, and what is the realistic or the reality, and that reality of bringing about the ultimate happiness. What brings about that ultimate happiness? That seeking, that urge, wanting to know that comes, and that will bring about the perfection of wisdom. And that's really imperative. So we can see the sequential order, how we got to the perfection of the wisdom aspect of it, and which is how it is, what is the reality, you know.
Dende jini di cho sagi yuba dang, sunam sagi yuba dang, ane cho le yang rugu yu na, ane ngaran zui di cheba di wane da ji goyo cheba dang, jenda che rungwa chi dang, ane di cheba di tunda chimbu yuba di ngaran zui di ngo chi chu yung sarwa.
So, putting our hard work, joyous perseverance into that kind of action, then it really clearly aligns with how much Lord Buddha has for 3 eons, that he has accumulated tremendous amount of merit and the tremendous purification he has done. And so that makes sense, in terms of the purification and accumulation of the merit process. So, and then when these things make sense, then whatever hard work, time that we spend into Dharma practice, it becomes meaningful. And when you do that, then the true purpose comes about.
제가 남규네다 미 망고지기 셈나로 똑같이 여러 가에서는 초사 지버 장세에 미기 통해 매인 순서 된적이 미지 된다 된배 추적이 자와지 제네디 초사기 유나면나 지버 정기 유나면나 삼베다 대숨디 고 지와질레 되고 와서
just in the general sense, many people have this doubt and the question, because when it comes to accumulation of tremendous merit and accumulation of the purification practice, it is not something visible and manifested, It's not tangible, let's put that way. It's not tangible. So there's many people, they will be doubt, will that bring about merit or purification? So those kind of question arises in a general sense. No.
아간지 초사 지버자네 세딜 초사 지버자네 겨와치말 디네기 모드네 고 대기 유나면에 펜토고 유나면나스 야 겨와치말이 네 치미 치말 베기 유나면나 간더 상게벌 안지 세딜 상게네레 겨와 제일 간데질 상게네 게주도 이네 초사 주장도 모드네 대기 유나면나스베 디 도과의 연구를 도과 연구를 봤을 때
No. And then another question that really comes about is in terms of accumulating tremendous amount of merit and the purification practice, how much that accumulation of merit and purification will help in this life, and will how much of these accumulation of merit and purification will help in the next life? Will that continue or not? Will the benefits of the accumulation of merit and the purification, will that benefit future to future life? And how long will that last till the enlightenment? These are, questions that arises in the minds in a general way.
당나진다 간다 단지미 알아서 용자를 좀 되게 방법 도마를 두게 바로 계신 장면숨로 초사 담망음을 좀 사이게 시도가네 좀 되게 된데 초사 다 지버자에 대해서 계신 숨기 발이야 모든 두시에제 아니 냐르토야다 심토야다 네토야디 내가 가릴 때는 중요했어.
So now the true question comes about is that Lord Buddha himself has first, in the beginning, he has this awakening mind of enlightenment. And for 3 eons, he has engaged into accumulation of merit and purification practices. And then finally, he enlightened. And so when he moved into this path of reaching to the enlightenment state, so he was able to, by doing that accumulation of merit and purification, and finally he reached that. And so that's something we can think about.
So kandes sagu yume, tiba kandes shangu yume, de tabadan tamji kimbeki gyula kandes chugu yume. Ani dige samalo nam dina tin digane shung dungone za chimbuchi da ge chimbuchi da one ngara zole ya da ji goyang mo mar sha de duaso.
And so just like Lord Buddha was able to, by having some unique characteristic within his accumulation of merit and the purification, this gives us an example and encouragement that we too can do it. And we too can do it by having the right understanding. And this precious text, Dharma for the Path to Awakening, it really talks about what are the different elements you needed in order to have accumulate tremendous amount of merit and purification. And that makes it, this text, particular the Lamb for the Path of Awakening, very precious, and it is a very essential text that we really need to study in order to gain the right understanding of how to accumulate the tremendous merit and the purification.
이니 간다 덴데기 라미네자 최디 아니 최 만노와임바 아니 만노이메 마세 차상와 유바 아니 차상와 유바 마세 다 겨울을 간데 두게메데 안다 맞아 디간다 디제레도 그래서 그래 답시 디제레도.
Yes. So the Dharma, this text really talks about the spiritual path. It's a pure Dharmic path, that how we engage into our practice. And then, so this unique text, Lamp for the Path to Awakening, it's not a wrong path. It's a right path, and it not only right, but it's a complete path that we go about. And now the question is, in terms of the time frame, how swiftly we want. No. So for this, we finished this morning session of the teaching, and now this like 20 minutes. So for questions. Oh, Gisela has to go to. So if anybody wants to need to go to the restroom, please do so. That's his favorite quote. What is the quote today? Thomas said, Thomas we can go there later. Okay. Whose quote? Who said that? I don't know who said it. That quote about the Buddha. Yeah. It's very well, it's repeated many times. No, but yes, his holiness. Page 23 of the PDF of the commentary. Oh, really? From the commentary? Yeah. I didn't know it was from commentary. Because he didn't specify it. But it's there in the commentary. Page 23. Page 23, okay. But, okay. And question.
So Geshe mentioned this 3 characteristics of the 6 perfections. So could he elaborate on those?
And the Pajin Trunalo Pajin Redi Sum Sum Yora Keji Ani the Kandiji shower rest.
I know. The Penata, I want to Jimbal Chashagina, Sansing Jimbada, Chugi Jimbada, Mijipi Jimbas, Jimbasum Charuba.
No. So when we go into the sixth perfection, having each perfection has 3 characteristics. So let's take an example of the perfection of generosity. And within the perfection of generosity, the generosity of the gifts of material goods, and the generosity of protecting, which is the gift of fearlessness. And the third is the generosity of Dharma, giving Dharma teaching. So that's the perfection of generosity, and these 3 are unique characteristics for the perfection of generosity. So in the same fashion, each will have different characteristics. And in terms of the perfection of patience, then perfection of patience in relation to accepting the hardship, that's the first characteristic. And the second is not responding to the wrongdoer to you, and the third is the perfection of patience in relation to Dharma.
So they're more like divisions, 3 divisions, 3 types.
It says characteristics in the, I think each translations, they translate differently. Sometimes they say in Lamrim Shimo divisions, and sometimes they say characteristic. But when we really go into the scripture, it's tsingi, right? It's characteristics. Yewa. Oh, there's a division. Yes, division. So we can put that as divisions.
So when you were describing the in one eon and the destruction and what happens, it seemed like it was in the context of the world kind of getting destroyed. And then my mind is thinking about, is that the same and applicable to when I start going through the destruction of the elements and death? So that's just another way to look at this.
Gelai thangi geji chikzie jora gelai geji chungrim neba ani jikpa digala sunsus and these suwe negapsu ani morala sona jora sona di kharishus lana susu rani kewa shirat ni sidela neba and ni chiwe negapsu ani so come such a melomatim drogora the indigenous now sharsus these some not delirious
the bear as a chi juangi chagrim dang ani jigrim dang nerim dang ani tongba jodan di nation aranzu tangbu gedang ani dene ne dang dene shi dang dene yanjur gewala dang di tumba jin rogo dida kya shuji su pasha ya se to
So what Venerable has asked this question, that having this kind of alignment, it's really perfect, it's really good. And the elements, how this formation of existence has been formed, just like that, the formation, how it's existed, and the destruction process, and you bring about that from the 4 elements, how we come about through the birth process and how long we stay, and finally how we leave the death process. So your imprint has sort of came about, and that's very good.
Share the Jiguatan Jigorva. And then Bartos Jeje or Barto Telemuda. The neck gave us Yakio Telemuda. Gets it to Yan never Telemuda. Just a bit to move that day. Or the Danta and Rokuda.
No.
In Jarpura.
No. So how we go through the death process is very much how the destruction happens. And then we stay in the Partho state, which is the empty aspect of the existence. And then we are born, reborn, and that's the formation aspect. And then the existence is how long we stay through the life. So you have made that alignment, and that's really useful, and it's very good. No. So just let's take an example of our own physical body, and when we go through the death process, the first element that dissolves is the earth. And then comes the water element, and that the dryness happens. And then the dissolution process of the fire happens, and then there is the temperature of the body really goes down. And then when the element of the dissolution of the air, the breathing process stops and the air element dissolves. So how the elements dissolves. And then the mind element dissolves, and then comes the empty aspect. So in the similar dissolution process. And then again, how rebirth or regeneration process happens again from the mind itself, and that different elements in the sequential order, starting from the mind, the air, and then follows through the process. So it's in a similar fashion.
I think Geshe said that we can have a great scope practitioner devoid or exclusive from the small or the middling scope. But how does that work? How could you have bodhicitta without the renunciation covered in the first or the middle scope?
아니 기우 침부 길람주라 간사 딘데지 용초레 순수스 기우 침부 간사 란셰 기우 침부의 딩 메교지 체 기우 침부 란사 람사 기우 침부 란 레교지 딘데지 요아지 인데 코아지 차수스 딘데지 코아디 기우 침부의 딩 마도니 니중길로 메월라 다 아니 닝지 귤마기네 람사 아니 대버침빌람라 칸데스 주투오레스
But give it chimbu lam yin la, jing dang, tumewe lam mayin bas. Di yorba. Give it chimbu lam re, in a tamburane, tebo chimbu lam ya shu. And in easy chimbu guliki, consassion sigurva. Di gugi lam digeti, and a carsore, give it jing dang, give it jing sinemdo, and give it chumul lam chayamara. Give it jing dang, chumul lam chayamara.
For this question, they could be individual from the very, when they go into the spiritual path, they could begin from the very beginning the great compassion, and they may not necessarily enter into the characteristic of the middling scope and the small scope. From the very beginning of the practice, they could generate great compassion and enter into Mahayana path. They could be individual.
Timoyan dos jijangazu bedan sinji ji sune jigdwa. Jumde degi chug kolo kordu kana kolo tangbo ji korwas. Kolo tangbo kordu kana kolo dambe chitu chebe duje ji korwas. Dene jumde degi kolo niba korwas. Kolo niba kordu kana kolo niba korbe kapso jijing dosu kaplo di kapgi ta chitu chebe duje sabate korwas duje ji.
we can relate that to how Buddha has turned the wheel of Dharma. So when he turned 3 wheels of Dharma, when he first turned the wheel of Dharma, the disciples or the followers were very much unique individuals with a different disposition. So that's why Buddha gave the teaching distinctively to those individuals that he was who was following him. And then when he turned the second wheel of Dharma, then it was very much on the Heart Sutra. And so the individuals, seekers, that really seek that path with that inclination and disposition, Buddha was teaching. So there could be individuals from the very beginning, they enter into the great scope path right away. And we all accept the pure realms, and the pure, the pure realms. They are individuals who give birth or who are reborn into the pure realms. And for these individuals, they are born into the pure realm out of their strong aspiration and being blessed by the Buddhas, and they born into those pure realm. So those individuals who born into this pure realm, they start practicing right away the great scope. Another doubt that may be in your mind would be, how can they enter into Mahayana without the renunciation, right? So renunciation is something, a characteristic that's unique to the middle scope individual. So you might have this doubt that, the renunciation is not there, is it?
Yeah, with how it was phrased, it sounded like exclusive great scope practitioner, not relying on what is covered on the first 2. So then I was wondering, how can you generate bodhicitta if you're not relying on the renunciation generated in the middle scope?
The rest, sung the kachin lana, sumoragi, ko teba chimbe kansa chik lam shuwala, kiwu chungu da kiwu ding ki ku chik tumu ge lam shura, wondi kachin drum, kachini kunzu jangme na samsus.
Chazan di indi kanda ta namji nganzu sungtu yorela, an jeba chena ko dine seka che tuyeng ura. Pena tangbuni ne tekwa chumbiyo lamduli shunye kansa di gyuli ya nye zhungu lo chi yorwa sa. Di nye zhungu lo di ta nganzu yina di nyingji che yoy si ura, nyingji chimbo.
So when we ask this question, then we can analyze and delve deeper. As it is stated in the canons, that the individual who has this great scope individual mental set, that they already have the renunciation within their mind stream, is that their renunciation will transform into great compassion.
Chazandi indugane ta dendrawati ani ta tekwa chimbiyo lam kansa nyingji indi tekwa chimbiyo lam chaswa. Ta kisi di nyezhungu lo ondo chebe ina ta di yang nyezhungu lo le shayadwa. Chazandi chikre ni. Ta nibade la tekwa dringi kansa yulu ibe nyezhungu di ta nyezhungu rang re mato chige di nyingji chimbulu ya chagumdo aso.
So when we really analyze the process, is that in that unique individual mind, that renunciation transforms into compassion. once you have this great compassion, then you are entering into the middle Mahayana, the great scope individual path. Now, if it's only renunciation, if it is only renunciation which has no alignment of any of the characteristic of the compassion, then it becomes a middle scope. But for this individual mind, because he has this great compassion, the renunciation is within that. It, you know. So when we look deeper into the middle scope individual, whoever that individual is, that the aim or result from his or her own practice, they'll go to self-liberation, not beyond that. But and there won't be any kind of benefiting others or cherishing others. So that's another factor to take into consideration. So in that case, that individual will reach to the nirvana state of self-liberation only, to benefit oneself only. When that renunciation has the strong element within that is the great compassion, then that individual who is doing that practice will attain two goals. One is attaining one's own self-liberation, and one is also attaining to the Buddhahood level for the benefit of others. So your practice becomes in reaching to both the goals for these great scope individuals. So then now you can see, now dissecting this way, you can see the differences. We have, okay, it's 11:01, so we'll have the last question. Or then there's another one, so we'll take two questions.
This follows on Venerable Lam Sal's question. So, Geshe, you were speaking about another scope where an individual has characteristics that encompass all three scopes. So I'm wondering, in that case, with that individual who has characteristics encompassing all three scopes, could they be someone who has not yet overcome the 8 worldly concerns, who has not yet generated bodhicitta or renunciation, but still aspires, at least at some level, to full awakening?
Tiwadi handa Venerable Lamse ki tiwadi motunis, and Gelagi the Masung Sundu and Dichige Sunsus, Yang Kansa Kashi, Tewa Chungu Lam, Dingwe Lam, and Chimbu Lam, Sama Tumu, Sama Dumieji Kansa Jures, in the Chinika Nasus, Dende into any Dendeki Kansa Digi Gula Ko Kiwuchu Ding Chimu Sama Yudu, Kansa di Inde Yin Chures, Kansa di Susu Koa da Chik Jidengi Rodan Sangma, Chik touch some Madua Yimbada, Yine Susu Tewa Chimbu Lamdala, which Meba Yugashura, Meba, the Chik Kalakansam Chik Legio Chik, the Deji Yon Chogures.
In a tattoo, and the Lavrin and the Song Shabina, Kibu Jing down Tumuelam, and in Jing Quenelam, she is laying, but the next second delay was.
So this clarity will be much more clear in the stages to the path of enlightenment in the Lamrim, and that within the scopes, what is common to that scope, individual scope practice, what is uncommon to to this individual scope. So that demarcation, again, common practice to each individual and uncommon to each of the. So once you go more detail into that, then the clarity will happen.
다 당황 코랑 숨을 쉬지 제비나 단대 제비나 직된 페베기 다 간다를 저기 온도 저비나 뒤고야 완전 뒤제비나 지다 상기비 추 코랑래야 뭐 맞아다 상기비 추 코랑 많이 받아야게 내가 유디간에 꼭 인도 양식 좀 부셔도
What Venerable Ngawang has asked is that about engaging into people engaging into worldly engagement, if and then doesn't have the dharmic inclination, but aspiration could be there. But then again, we have to make a demarcation there, you know.
The example that you gave about the elements and the destruction of, I thought about like Earth and galaxy like this. Would that be a good way to do an analytical meditation to try and expand my mind from my own narrow view of just my situation? I don't, yeah.
And the Galagi Sunju Kalumnandu, any Giwa Chumwa neighbor Jiwagi Churin the Sundu, any Korangi Lola Karish Charsunani, and the Zambuling Chishura, the Tajik. Gamma da Nima da some galaxy shura, the Zogi Chungdan, did some do, and Indilola Chana Kandiunas, Suzurangi Gangi Jura, Gangi that Puzuto was Hejura, Nero, on the net of Hagisem Gagi Jura, Tela Pendo Yong to rest, young some notana do you?
Pendura, Gumi Nizita, Tumbashi, Chesa, Gamunji, Wanzo, Nanjuta, Seri, Numdo Chish, Jobina.
Yes, definitely it will help in your expansion of your mind, and just like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, that's why he has brought about all the relation, that open dialogue between the science and mind. All this is an indication of how we can utilize these. So of course this will benefit. Dedication praise, please.
May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Losang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. In the snowy mountain pure land, you're the source of good and happiness. Powerful Tenzin Gyatso Chenrezi, may you stay until samsara ends.